Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. I hope you're having a great week. I am your host of this weekly podcast, Tony Roig. This week we're going to actually dive into two subjects, so it's going to be a double header. So the riff will be a little bit longer and the main section will be a little bit shorter. So we're going to use that format for this week because I have two topics that I'd like to cover that are timely. The first one is about how the rules may be robbing you in a couple of different ways. So let's talk about how to avoid that. You know, I like whenever the new rule book comes out, it's like new rules equal new angst, new things we got to spend our mind on. And then in the what's normally the riff, but in the second segment of this, I want to talk about criticism. I want to talk about dealing with criticism and how do we determine at the first level, right, whether what's happening is a criticism or not a criticism. So that's going to be the subjects of this week's podcast. As we dive into the podcast, if you looking for coaching, right? If you're saying to yourself, you know, I would like to know more about pickleball, join us inside any of our coaching offerings. I can tell you from feedback from, you know, I've been in camps these last couple of weeks. I can tell you from feedback from campers, I can tell you from feedback from our online teachings, from our academy, from our pickleball system, that players are amazed at how much there is to learn in pickleball. And, you know, when they start seeing the game differently, they're like, oh my God, I can't believe I was missing all these other things, because you don't know until you know and what you're missing. So, you know, I'm pretty confident that you know that there's parts of pickleball that are out there, right, that can be learned. And if you're interested in that, please join us. And you can go to betterpickleball.com and check that out. And you may or may not know this, but this podcast itself is brought to you by Better Pickleball. So this is part of the Better Pickleball coaching ecosystem. This is the athletic pillar or mental part of the game. That's what we do on this podcast. All right, let's dive into how the rules may be robbing you. And they're robbing you in a couple of different ways. So let me frame it out for you in terms of what I mean by the rules, or what type of rules kind of thinking I'm talking about. So we're sitting here in 2025 and the new rules came out. Now, the new rules didn't really change anything. Not in any kind of way that matters. And sometimes the rules do change, right? So, you know, they added the drop serve. That's a big change, because the drop serve allowed for a different type of serve that previously was not legal, and it opened up a whole different type of serving. So, you know, those types of rule changes are big. This year, the big rule change was, you know, and if you read the comments to the rule change, you'll see that it's more of a housekeeping item, you know, for the, you know, a little bit of cleanup. I mean, there is a little bit of impact, and I'll address it, but the rule change has to do with the non-volley zone, you know, when the volley starts. So before, basically, the volley included the swing of the paddle before the ball was struck. The rules committee, I don't want to get into the rules committee stuff too deep in terms of my thinking about it, but I know that they seem to be very concerned about referees being able to make calls, which is fair. I don't want the referees to have a difficult time, but so it's difficult to know when the swing begins. So they've moved away. They did the same thing with the serve last year, and they explained this in the comments as well, which is it's at the point of contact. So the serve begins when you hit the ball. They made the same thing with the volley. So the volley begins when you hit the ball. So I got questioned from several different players. This is not one player. Several different players in several different contexts have asked, okay, so, you know, so the basically the non-volley zone rule, the stuff before doesn't apply anymore. That's not the case, with one exception. The exception is your paddle touching the non-volley zone before you volley it. So if you accidentally scrape the non-volley zone before you volley the ball, that is not a violation any longer, because the volley begins at the time you hit the ball, not when you start your swing. Other than that, everything's the same. So, you know, it's basically, it's just everything's the same. I don't want to get into like the non-volley zone rule has not changed, other than that one little thing. And so, but players are like, they're thinking about it, right? They're spending their time thinking about like this change, and they're talking about it. They're having, and conversation is fine. I don't mind, like, if you're having conversation for conversation's sake, that's fine. But here's what I think is happening. I think what's happening is when these things occur, it leads to wasted bandwidth. And what I mean by that is, there's only so much stuff you can do in your brain, right? There's only so much you can process, only so much you can focus on things. And there's so much more, from my perspective, that is going to give you a better game for yourself, that's going to give you more enjoyment out there. And so what I would suggest is focusing on those aspects of pickleball more than these outlier kind of things on the rules or anything that's outlier. And when you think about this particular rule, right? What are you going to do about it? Was like paddle scraping the court before a volley a big part of the game in your world? I'm going to guess no. And if it happened, what do you care anyway, back then or now? Same thing, kind of like, how players sometimes step in a little bit, move, whatever, just do your thing, enjoy yourself. And that's the second part of where like a too heavy rule focus can rob you, is enjoyment and friendship and, just having a nice time on the pickleball court. Because think about the arguments that arise out on the pickleball court. Usually they're rule driven, right? Usually it's, out call or an NBZ violation that someone thinks happened, illegal serves and things like that. Those end up they don't end well because, frankly, there's nothing in the rules that allows a resolution not normally, but for a lot of these, nor should there be, because what should be the resolution? Is it your call or my call, right? And then, and we don't have a referee. So, and so, think about it more big picture in terms of the rule stuff. Not telling you to disregard all the rules and go nuts, and things like that, right? Live within the rules, but apply it think big picture about it. What rules are really going to impact the play, and then when you're playing, like, are you gonna, are we gonna allow a game to get out of line, right? Get out of whack because of a potential rules violation? Because again, the other player may disagree, so it may not be a rules violation. I don't know. Anyway, so give that some thought in terms of your relationship with the rules. And whenever you hear new rules and I would suggest this to you. Whenever you hear big pronouncements about rules changes, be very wary with those. They happen very rarely. One other thing that I got asked was something about, I'm trying to remember what it was, because it was something about the serve, and it was basically it was either you couldn't drop serve anymore, or it was like a really big change to the serve that a player asked me about, and I was like, there's no like what? We got rid of what? Oh, it was spinning the ball with your paddle, right? So basically, because I don't know, you can never get rid of that. Spinning the ball after you hit it, not the pre-spin, because the ball always spins when it comes off your paddle. So. Anyway, so that was an interesting, I was like, whoa, where did they hear that from? So, be mindful, have a little alarm for that when you hear a big rules kind of thing shared with you. And just generally speaking for yourself, don't let rules rob you, whether it's rob you from your bandwidth so that you can focus on what's going on, or rob you from your enjoyment of that awesome game that you're playing. All right. Let's dive into the second topic. Before we do, I want to give a brief shout out to one of our partners. Sometimes we get asked questions about ball machines, and ball machines are very helpful. They can be very helpful to your game, but they're a big investment. They are a big investment. Do not run out and buy a ball machine unless you're committed to the ball machine. What we recommend first is take a bucket of balls, 10, 20 balls, and take it to the court a few times. Make sure you're committed to this process. Make sure you're committed to getting in your car with some balls and your paddle and putting in work, 30 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. If you're not going to do it with a bucket of balls, you're not going to do it with a ball machine. Ball machine's just going to sit in your garage. You don't want that. But if you decide that you are going to put in the work, ball machine can give you a ton of reps in different scenarios. We have a ball machine that we have partnered with that we we've tried it out. We think it's a really good ball machine, well made. It's not on the cheap side of the ball machines, but it's a solid product. Comes with an app, has a couple of things like a removable battery. So it's called the Titan Ball Machine, but we have a link down in the show notes, as well as you go to betterpickleball.com. You can always find that under resources. But check that out. And there is an affiliate link. Basically, we get a commission if you purchase it through there, which helps support the podcast and our other coaching efforts that we do for free. And anyway, so check that out. And if you're ready for a ball machine, that's a good one to try. All right, let's talk about criticism. And what I want to focus on here isn't so much the second part of it, which would be like, what do I do if I'm criticized, right? How do I deal with it and things like that? I want to give you an idea that might help you nip it in the bud a little bit in terms of the criticism. Because here's the thing. Criticism can occur, right? There are situations where you are being criticized. And criticized here, the term criticism here I'm using in its negative sense, right? In the no point criticism stuff. For example, it would be like, you miss a shot in a game and it's like, well, you're always missing that shot or something like that, right? That's a criticism, not helpful, right? It's just negative. It's just attacking. And so that's the way I'm using the term criticism here, not in the potentially constructive sense, which I believe you can also use it in that sense, as you'll see as we get through this. So criticism certainly happens. And I would suggest that nobody likes criticism. I don't like criticism. Again, criticism without a point. Just, we're all human beings. No one likes being criticized. And so, so criticism, no bueno. But here's the thing. How do you know that you're being criticized? Or is it something else? Could it be feedback? And could it be constructive feedback, right? Could it just be like, being, advised of something that would help you, improve that in the future? Because like, think about how would you improve without that? Meaning like, without some sort of feedback, either you need to figure it out on your own, okay? Or someone needs to tell you. An example would be like, say you're hitting your shot too late. Okay, so let's just take one shot. You're a return to serve. So you're running forward, you're going past the balls are getting behind you, so the balls are going wide, or you lose control, you can't have power on them. Basically, your shot breaks down because you're hitting them late. How do you fix it? If you want to, right? So you want to fix it, but I'm guessing you do. Well, you can figure it out yourself. That's true. Like for instance, inside our pickleball system, we teach you energy, trajectory, things like that. So you could work through that puzzle and as trajectory, paddle angle. Oh, I see. I'm hitting it behind me. Okay, I see it. So nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's the dream, right? That's what we do as coaches, right? For you is do the same thing that I'm describing. Or you can get feedback. Is the other option if you can't solve it yourself. And so how do you get feedback? You get feedback from a friend, family member who knows what they're doing, or a coach, right? In terms of, this is what I'm seeing. I'm seeing that you're doing this. So that information can be received as criticism, right? Because that person, let's say I'm coaching you, right? And I say that to you, I'm criticizing you. I'm like, well, you're hitting the ball late. So you're a faulty player, right? Because you're hitting the ball late. But is it really criticism, or is it constructive feedback? I would submit to you in that scenario, it's constructive feedback. And so what I want to suggest to you before you consider something being criticism, let's be aware of a couple of things. Number one is what we think of something is a result of how we interpret it in our own mind. That's the everything. That's the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? Everything that happens in life is filtered through our processing center, our brain. So we need to be aware of that. And with that, we can be aware of what our own predispositions are. Okay. Some of us are more predisposed to seeing a criticism. Some of us are more predisposed to seeing feedback, right? And so this is not criticism, just to be clear about that. It's just understanding yourself better and then understanding which way you're maybe predisposed. That way you'll be ready when a piece of information comes in or feedback comes in, whether is this good feedback or criticism, the not helpful kind of feedback. And then the second thing, and then ask yourself, why is this criticism as opposed to feedback, right? Why am I looking at it that way? And then one other piece that you can use is consider the source and the context or the environment in which the feedback is being provided. Is it coming from a loved one, right? And oftentimes, loved one feedback can be difficult, food, things like that, right? It can feel like they're attacking, but, probably not if it's a loved one. I mean, it may be, but it could be a toxic relationship. I'm not saying that doesn't exist, but ask yourself. Coach, right, would be somebody who probably not criticizing you, probably offering feedback, or at least trying to. And then, you can think about an environment in which you're out there with fellow players and they're friends of yours or fellow players who are co-students and things like that. Perhaps the information they're providing to you is not aimed at criticizing. It's aimed at giving you feedback based on the context that you're in. So those are the kind of things that you can think about, consider in terms of how you think about the information coming your way. And as I mentioned, no one enjoys being criticized. Even myself, your host, I'm not a fan of being criticized. But think about if I can better gatekeep that, right? Is it criticism or is it constructive feedback? Then I can avoid the negative feeling, right? The negative impact that it has on me, feeling that I was criticized, not feedbacked. And then I can gain the benefits of the feedback, right? I can gain the benefits of the information that's being shared with me. So it goes from a negative, actually it turns it all around from a negative to a positive if I can give it the correct tag, if you will, when the information comes my way. So give that some thought. Perhaps that will help if you are feeling criticized about your pickleball or anything else. All right, that's this week's podcast. I hope you enjoyed it, the doubleheader format. If you enjoyed it, throw a rating out there. Review it if you can, and share it with your friends. Let them know, maybe you have a friend out there who's feeling unduly criticized. You can help share this with them. Or if you have a friend of yours who's so bogged down in the rules that they can't enjoy the beautiful game of pickleball that you are currently playing. Next week, I will be back with a regular episode of the podcast. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but you want to check that out. And then be on the lookout for, we're going to publish a bookmark episode, which is, we're going to try and do a few more of those this year. We have one or two in the past if you search bookmark episode. But basically the idea is these are episodes that you can bookmark and repeat because they're designed to be repeated. All the podcasts can be reheard. You're welcome to do that. But these in particular are set up in a way that basically they help you either get to the court or deal with stuff after the court and things like that. So be on the lookout for that. Anyway, hope you have a great week, and I will see you next week, the next episode of Pickleball Therapy. Be well.